My dear friends and all my viewers, in this video tutorial, I welcome you all. This video tutorial, I have prepared to understand the short story, one of the widely read branch of literature, understanding short story. In this video, at the beginning, I will throw light upon two basic definitions of the short story. One is general and the other one is from Wikipedia. And then I will move towards the significant certain elements of the short story, constituent elements of the short story. Friends, you might be knowing that every writer, he or she, in order to compose any short story, they keep in mind these elements. So I hope this video tutorial will help a lot to understand the proper structure of the short story. So let us see. So friends, you might be knowing, in analyzing a short story, there are certain elements that the reader should look for in the story. All stories begin with a seed of an idea. From that point, the author then should plan his story around these elements. In this video tutorial, in the beginning, we are going to see the basic definitions of the short story. Here I have selected two definitions. Among them, one is general definition and the other one is taken from Wikipedia. So here the first definition, let us see. Short story, it is a fictional tale of length that is too short to publish in a single volume like a novel. Short stories are usually between 5 and 6 pages. As a result, they can be read in a single sitting. The second definition, which is taken from Wikipedia, according to Wikipedia, it says a short story is a piece of prose fiction that typically can be read in one sitting and focuses on a self-contained incident or series of linked incidents with the intent of evoking a single effect or mood. So this is how these two definitions. So along with these two definitions, we are moving towards now the elements of the short story. So here the first element, which is plot. It is the significant element, according to Aristotle, the significant element of novel. So all the elements of the short story are applicable to novel also in a major proportion. Now, the plot is the arrangement of the events in the story. Here in terms of the structure, there is Freytag's pyramid. This Freytag's pyramid of plot, it includes 5 elements, that is introduction, rising action, climax, falling action, and then resolution or denouement. The plot should follow some logical sequence of events. So there are 5 elements in the Freytag's pyramid. So these 5 elements that we will see here: introduction, which can also be called as the exposition. The reader meets the characters and discovers the setting. Here, in introduction, reader's interest is aroused. The conflict that derives the story's action is discovered at the end of the introduction with the initiating incident. The initial events, the introduction of characters, themes, setting, and the beginning of the story. Then the second element of the Freytag's pyramid is rising action. The beginning of the conflict. It is the beginning of the conflict where complications arise. It builds up the story, a series of steps that lead to the climax. You get more information about conflict and character here. Now, third element, climax. This is the highest point of interest in the story.
It is the turning point that aims toward the conclusion of the story. The reader finds out what happens to the conflict, how the conflict might be resolved. The story may not yet be finished, but the reader now has a good understanding of what way it is going to go. Then next element, which is falling action. The events here, the events that occur which begin to resolve the conflict. And denouement. Denouement, it is actually a French word which means conclusion or resolution. So here we come across conclusion. This is the final outcome of the story. This part follows quickly after the climax and provides the last pieces of information for the reader. As I have told you, denouement is French word for unknotting, and you may therefore think of denouement as the unknotting or untangling of the plot. However, not all conclusions provide resolutions. There are 4 types of conclusions, and they have a variety of names. So let us see those different types of conclusions. Types of conclusions. There are 4 types. So the first one is expository happy. The second one is expository sad. Third one is surprising end or twisting end. And the fourth one type of conclusion is unresolved or indeterminate. So here these 4 types of conclusions here we find. In expository happy, all loose ends are tied up and explained and the ending is happy. In sad, expository sad, here we find the ending is sad. And in twisting, something happens that the reader does not expect at all. It is called as surprising end. And indeterminate, the reader is left with questions and has to supply the ending him or herself. Some loose ends are left to dangle. So these are the conclusions. Then we are moving towards the second element of the short story, which is characterization. Now here we are going to take a review of different aspects of the characters, or characterization, or character sketch, or character types. Now characterization means the collection of characters or people in a short story. A character, of course, is usually a person in a story, but it can also be an animal. The development of the characters is important to the story. The characters are the heart of the story. The 2 primary characters are called the protagonist and the antagonist. These are primary and significant. The protagonist is the main character. It is not safe to call him the hero because the main character is not always heroic. He or she is the person with which the story is most concerned. Even the whole story weaved around the protagonist. And the other one, the antagonist, does not have to be a human being. If he is a person, he may be the villain. This character does not have the main character's best interest at heart. In some stories, nature is the antagonist. Some characters do not change in a story. These characters are called flat. And the characters that change during the course of the story or grow are called round characters. So get proper understanding of flat and round. Flat character, this is the minor character with 1 or maybe 2 sides to the personality. These characters might not seem very realistic or lifelike because so little is known about them. And in terms of round character, these characters are believable and complex people with several sides to their personality. They are lifelike and behave like real people would. If real people were in those same situations, then dynamic character. Dynamic character, also known as a kinetic character. A dynamic character changes in some important way because of plot events. For example, a cruel old man might see the error of his ways and become generous and kind, or a gentle girl becomes vicious and angry because her parents divorce. Then we have static, slightly different. These characters are the opposite of dynamic characters. These people don't change through the course of a story, they have the same personality throughout. Then we have stereotypical. These stereotypical, also known as stock. These characters are people who are easily recognized as types. It wouldn't matter in which story they appear, they are always the same. For example, the old witch like woman, the Greek scientist, the airhead, and the dumb joke characters are all stereotypical or stock characters. So, in this sense, they are all cliches. And now we have the last type of character, which is caricature. Caricature. So, let us see what it means. A character in a piece of literature who has very exaggerated characteristics, usually for comic effect. In a way, a caricature is an extreme form of stereotype. You might be knowing Shakespeare often uses comic villains as flat characters. Now, a little bit more information I would like to share here. The character analysis and character sketch. The author may choose any of 6 ways to reveal a character to the reader, and these 6 ways are physical appearance, the things that the character says, the third one, the things that the character does, the fourth one, things the character thinks, fifth one, things other characters say about their character, and the last one is author information. A character sketch is a description of a character's moral and personality qualities, written in paragraph form with specific examples from the story in question. Usually, the character terms are used in the course of the description. Physical appearance and dress are sometimes described as well. So, this is how the characterization is. Then, we are moving towards the third element, which is called as setting. Setting. The author may choose to state the setting clearly or leave it to the reader to infer from textual clues. This element refers to the place and time of the story. Place and time of the story. When evaluating the setting, look for where the action takes place. In addition, the historical period may be important. So here the context, contemporary context, social context, historical context, the time period and the locations of those happenings, and background, visuals, costumes and makeup. These are very significant element in terms of setting. Here there are 2 parts to complete setting: emotional setting and physical setting. Physical setting and emotional setting. The mood or the atmosphere of a story is the emotional setting. So readers need to concentrate on words that evoke feeling and emotion. The time, place and season comprise the physical setting. The time, place and season. So readers need to concentrate on words that describe physical details. So this is how these all elements are very much significant in terms of setting, because they are very relevant to move the plot of the story ahead and to engage the attention of the readers or the audiences if it is to be a visualization, then we are moving towards next element, which is known as theme. Now, in terms of theme actually it is a central idea of the story. This is the controlling idea or the insight that the author wants the reader to understand at the end of the story. So it is a center of the story, theme. The central idea, message, moral, and this message is stated through dialogues of antagonist or protagonist. It is sometimes, mostly it is stated through dialogues and actions. It includes some distinctive philosophy. It includes some distinct type of philosophy. It has a moral lesson. It is the message of the story stated in one or two complete sentences. Sometimes theme may be its reflection may be in the title itself of the story. For example, you might be knowing Ruskin Bond's one of the story, the cherry tree. The cherry tree. So the title of the story is a cherry tree, the cherry tree, and the whole story was about cherry tree. So this is how mostly you are going to come across with the title itself is the theme of the story. So it is a very significant topic that the author wants to imprint through the story. So it can be of any topic. When a person describes a story's theme, the person is describing what can be learned about life and or people from the story. Theme is so important. It is often described as the fourth element of the story. Short story. Sometimes theme is confused with the moral of the story. It can be of any topic like love, friendship, greed, sacrifice, self-destruction, environmental consciousness. Sometimes theme is direct, explained in dialogues or in title. Sometimes it is indirect. It becomes the duty of the readers to bring out the proper message, the central idea of the story from indirect representation of the story. So this is all about the theme. It is often the author's thoughts or a view of a subject. Now we are moving towards the next element, which is conflict. Conflict derives the plot forward. The reader discovers the conflict by the end of the introduction with the initiating incident, which is an event that demonstrates the conflict to the reader and begins the rising action. Either internal or external conflict can be the main conflict of a story, and therefore the primary driver of the plot. In every story there has to be a problem. The main character has to be challenged in some ways or the story will go nowhere. There are 4 basic conflicts to look for that may face the main character, and those are here: man versus man, man versus nature, man versus himself, man versus society. So while internal conflict, when the conflict is inside a character in a short story or a novel as an internal struggle. So usually characters, like real people, have conflicting fears and goals that cause them to behave in certain ways. These secret conflicts represent the character's internal conflict. The reader, of course, is aware of the internal conflict because he or she can see the character's thoughts. Then we have, external conflict. Now, when the conflict is outside a character in a short story or a novel, external conflict is the opposite of internal conflict, in that the conflict is obvious to all the other characters in the story as well as the reader. External conflict is best described as the adversities faced by the character during the plot. And additionally, there are 4 different categories of conflict, and those are, as we have seen, person versus person, person versus self, person versus environment, person versus the supernatural or machine. So this is how this element of the short story. Now we are moving towards point of view, the next element of the short story. Now the writer selects the point of view from which to tell the story that best suits his or her intentions as a writer. This element of the story is how the story is told. It also determines who will be the narrator of the story. So here the first person point of view. Here one of the characters tells the story and interacts in the story as well. I. So here in first person we find I is the central character and tells his or her own story. Then second person, the story is told about you. The story is told about you. For example, you could see the anger in her eyes. So the author can narrate the story using a godlike position in which he can see into the minds of the characters. Then we have third person. So here the point of view can be one of omniscient, limited omniscient, and objective. So in an omniscient point of view, characters are referred to as he and she, and the reader knows what is going on in their heads. All characters' thoughts are made clear in the text. In limited point of view, in limited omniscient point of view, we see characters are referred to as he and she, and the reader knows what is going on in some of their heads. The remaining characters are treated in the objective fashion. Then the last one, objective point of view. Here the story is about he or she, and the author records action objectively as a movie camera would. The reader does not see any of the characters' thoughts, doesn't get inside their heads. Then we are moving towards the other elements, and these elements are flashback. So in flashback, when a character thinks back to an event that occurred before the story began. Sometimes flashbacks are written as separate interrupter sections within a novel. Flashbacks are also used in short stories. The next element is foreshadowing. It is a hint of events to come, a kind of prediction through dialogues. Also, it is used extensively in both novels and short stories. Then we have suspense. It is an anxiety or apprehension resulting from an uncertain, undecided, or mysterious situation. Suspense is when the writer creates excited anticipation of an approaching climax in the mind of the readers. So this is how flashback, foreshadowing, and suspense, these three are the significant element. Now we are moving towards language of the short story. Now here the word choices, the diction of the author, it also sometimes may be stock, maybe emotional, maybe diverting or persuasive, relating to contemporary situations. Then the enunciation of the author also help a lot. Then because it reflects some cultural connotations, sometimes cultural connotations, ethnicity and race. Then dialogues of the characters, because dialogues sometimes reflects feelings and emotions, so they are significant. And these dialogues, through word choices and enunciation, these dialogues help a lot for plot to move the actions. And they have each and every writer has a specific style of diction and language and ending. Then we have monologues and soliloquies. So now monologues and soliloquies are also helpful. Monologues means the person's self speech with himself or herself. Such kind of soliloquies also help a lot for the understanding of intention of.
So friends, thus these were the elements of short stories, and I hope this tutorial will help you a lot to understand the proper structure of the short story. So in next video tutorial we will meet once again. Till then, thank you.